What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero back with another retro Yu-Gi-Oh video, and this is going to be a very special video because it's going to be closing out my regular coverage of Vampire format. Now, I know for longtime fans of the channel who have been waiting for me to cover certain decks in Vampire, like Guardians, for instance, this may be a bit disappointing, but I promise you that I will feature decks like that in the future in sort of the mirror matches that I've done for things like Fushio Richie and things like that. Unfortunately, Guardians didn't quite make the cut for my coverage here just because the deck is really bad. Like, it is really bad. I tried to build it. It was not going well. So I'm going to shelve that for a future video, just revisiting Vampire and looking at that deck again. But for now, if you wanted a bit of Guardian fix, we do have a deck featuring Elma here because this is going to be the video where I show off all the degenerate stuff that you can do in Vampire format. Now, I already showed off some degenerate decks before, like with the Tsukiyomi Mask Loop and with Burn and things like that. But there are a class of other Vampire decks that, I think maybe aren't quite as good as those decks. But are playable in this format, and I want to cover them before I leave, so I'm just going to do that all in one go. And to start off with, we're going to be covering the sort of famed Elma FTK, and basically the idea of this is that you've got Royal Magic Library, you've got Gearfried the Iron Knight, you equip Butterfly Dagger Elma to Gearfried the Iron Knight, get an infinite amount of counters on Royal Magic Library, and you can draw your entire deck. And there are a couple different win cons you can do with this. You can do things like all 5 pieces of Exodia, or you can do what I think is the better version of this deck, which is going for the Reversal Quiz FTK. And basically the idea behind this is that if you get your life points down to 500 or below, and you have Black Pendant on your side of the field, then you can activate Reversal Quiz, and if you do guess the top card of your deck correctly, then everything will get sent from your field to the graveyard. You will switch life points with your opponent, and then Black Pendant will deal 500 damage to them. So basically, I built this deck, adapting it pretty heavily from the version in GOAT, although, changing it to fit this format, adding some powerful cards that format does not have. And I will say, you can also make a version of this deck without the Elma Gearfried package, but there are some benefits to doing it this way. For one, you get to play Reinforced in the Army, which is a great spell, gets a counter on Library, gets a card to your hand. Now, we are only playing one Gearfried, as you don't want to play too many monsters, or else that will break this deck up. But Reinforcement in the Army can still be activated in this format, even if you know you don't have a Warrior in deck, because it will just fail to find. And oftentimes that can be a decent thing, because this basically reads shuffle your deck. And when you're playing things like Convulsion of Nature, like Spellbook Organization, where you know the top card of your deck a lot of the time, then this can be good to sort of get rid of blanks on the top of your deck. Same thing with Thunder Dragon here. Thunder Dragon's a great way to deck thin, as well as just, if you see a card coming up that you don't like, you can pitch one of the Thunder Dragons that you have in hand, shuffle out the deck, and hopefully get a better one. Now, if you've never seen this deck, at work, then this might be a little bit shocking to you and a little bit surprising to you. You might have no idea how exactly this works, and don't worry, we'll get into some games with it, which will hopefully show off what it's supposed to do. But on the sort of like overview of it, basically you're trying to start out with a Royal Magical Library on field, get a bunch of counters on it, get a bunch of draws, especially using things like Convulsion of Nature combined with Archfiend's Oath. Archfiend's Oath, continuous spell, lets you pay 500 life points, declare one card name, look at the top card of your deck. If it's a declared card, add to your hand, otherwise send it to the graveyard. And with Convulsion of Nature, which flips over both players' decks, you'll know what card is coming next. So you use these, draw a bunch, use Giant Tornado, bounce them to hand. They're not hard ones per turn, so you can use them multiple times per turn. And while you're doing that, you can also activate things like Tomb World as well to get your life points down even lower. You can activate things like Spell Reproduction to get spells back from your graveyard to your hand. Hopefully, over the course of your combo, you draw into something like Graceful Charity or Card Destruction to get the Gearfried in the graveyard. Then you can use Monster Reborn to bring back the Gearfried, and then equip it with Elma. We also have Premature Burial, and this is mainly here to bring back copies of Royal Magical Library. You can occasionally get 2 or even more copies of Royal Magical on your side of the field, and also given the fact that, Trinade will bounce back Premature Burial as well, it's another way to get your life points low. Beyond that, we've got some interesting cards. We get Mystical Space Typhoons, which doesn't typically see play in the Go version of the deck, but with Imperial Order in the format, just shutting this deck down entirely. You do want to play Mystical Space Typhoon, in my opinion. And also, if you don't have the breaker, or not the breaker, the Gearfried in hand, then you can use it in conjunction with Butterfly Dagger Elma to basically keep reusing this card and getting counters on Library as well. So it does have that neat little application there too. Also, spell reproduction lets you pitch 2 spells to grab back a spell from your graveyard. So this can serve, worst case scenario, as another spell for that. Also, we've got these spellbook organizations. I mentioned them earlier, but basically they're a quick play spell that lets you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, then return them to top in any order. So if you don't have Convulsion up, you can use that with Archfiend's Oath. You can also use this to stack the deck in a way that lets you pull off your combo a bit more easily. We also have Painful Choice here. This is mainly used to send monsters from the deck to the graveyard, just to thin out the deck a bit, get a monster to hand that can potentially be pitched for something like card destruction or charity, but occasionally you do want to use it just to get spells engraved for the spell reproduction as well. It's more of an edge case, but it can come up. Lastly, we've got this Upstart Goblin here just to draw into more cards. And for the remaining monsters, we've got a Fiber Jar and a Cyber Jar. These are more like if you draw them and you don't quite have the pieces for the FTK, you can only set these and hopefully go for it on your next turn. So I do think they're pretty good there. We've got a side deck here too. It can side into a more serious Gear-Freed deck with like multiple Gear-Freed Exiled Force and the Blast with Chains and stuff. But for this video, I didn't really dive into the siding that much. You can also do a smokescreen side between this deck and any of the other of degenerate decks featured in this video, as a lot of them do share similar DNA. But I do think that this deck is my preferred build of the deck. You may see another build of it in this video as well, but I do like this after a fair amount of testing. And the great thing about these FTK decks is that you can just test them a lot in solo mode, just doing test hands and seeing how it works. And I do think that after testing around 10 hands of this, a little bit more than that, that this is the more consistent version of Library FTK in this format. I do also have another version that I tested out, and I'll show on screen now. But I don't think this version is actually as good. Basically, this is cutting the Gear-Freed. We still have the Elma, because Elma plus MST is still very good. But so we've cut the Gear-Freed, we've cut the reinforcements of the army, and instead of those, and also we've cut Cyber Jar as well. And instead of those, we're playing Double Gather Your Mind, a Mirage of Nightmare, and an additional copy of Spell Organization. Gather Your Mind is an interesting card. It basically thins your deck by 1, and also gets a spell in hand for spell reproduction, so it's nice in that way. We couldn't really fit it in the Gear-Freed deck, but if you're playing a deck without the Gear-Freed package, then I think the Gather Your Mind is decent. We're not playing 3 of it because it can only be activated once per turn. It's a hard once, so there's only really a point to playing 1 copy. Or not 1 copy, but 2 copies. So that way you search one off the other, and then you're done. And just like with reinforcements, this can sort of shuffle the top card off your deck. So, yeah, so this is like the sort of typical version of Library FTK, similar to something that you'd see in GOAT. But I do think the Elma version is actually surprisingly better after doing more tests with it, although it can also be a little bit more bricky with things like Gear-Freed in it as well. And again, the side deck here is mainly here for like tinkering with things. We have the hand rips in case you're going first and you want to bring those in. We get Dragged Down into the Grave, which is a card I experimented with a little bit. Ultimately didn't end up liking the most. Just because you wind up in a lot of situations where you don't necessarily want to discard what's in your hand, and also it is like a hard -1. Even though you do get to rip a card out of your hand or your opponent's hand and then draw deeper into your deck. So I'm not the biggest fan of Drag Down, but it is interesting here. So it's an option that you can play in this deck if you want to. Also, one other interesting thing to note, a lot of the GOAT versions of this deck do play Sangan to search out Library. I think Sangan's a little bit too slow in this format. So I didn't play Sangan in this version of the deck or the other Gear-Freed version as well. But now that I've shown off both these versions of Library FTK, let's see how the Gear-Freed version does and if we can actually pull off the Elma combo. Okay, we got a game against Dump Truck here. Frequent guests on the channel, always a pleasure to have them on, although for them it might not be as pleasurable a game, given that the FTK is pretty degenerate. We are going to be going first here, so hopefully we can pull it off. And unfortunately, this hand is not really that good. We've got Convulsion plus Oath, so we're going to fire the Convulsion. Look at the top card of our deck. We're going to go for Oath here as well. Pay 5, grab that Royal Magical Library, and ooh, the next card of our deck, well, it's not really showing up on the replay, but it is a monster. So a little bit of a stinker there. Might be another library. It might be a, I don't remember what it was. But yeah, we hopefully we get to see the top card of the deck in the replay here. Okay, good. We do see a Trinade. That's a great card to grab, but unfortunately we don't quite have enough gas here to go for the Royal Magical Library combos here because, we can't really quite do anything with this hand. So we just got to hope that they can't actually clear this library next turn. And the next turn we get like Trinade and stuff. We do see that they've got an MST here, so maybe I should have set this MST just to sort of play around them, firing MST on one of our cards. maybe that would have been the better option, but I figure I want to keep this MST in hand so that way we can spell reproduction back one of these spells next turn. So that's my philosophy behind this. Might have been wrong. And they're just going to fire MST on the Oath, which I think is ultimately okay, but they've got Knock. Knock will be really annoying for our set there. They're going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw the True Nade, and unfortunately we can't quite do anything else there. We're going to set this MST, pass back to them. Unfortunately, DB is really glitching in the replay, so we don't quite get to see as much sort of strategic depth here, which is quite unfortunate. Yeah, this replay might not really be as helpful, but what I'll do is I'll just go into solo mode and show off some games with the deck there. But Convulsion is popped by their Harpies. They're going to bring out Tribe, go for a ton of damage here. Get in for a lot of it. Set 1, pass back to us. We draw Royal Magical. I mean, we can set that at least. And that might stave off the damage for a little bit here. We're going to summon it, and we're just going to go for the combo. We're going to spell Repro, pitching 2, and targeting Oath. We're going to grab that back. And we're just going to go for Oath here. Pay 5, call Reversal Quiz, just hoping that we get it. Unfortunately, we don't. It's just card destruction. We're going to True Nade back everything. Then activate Oath. That gets us another counter on Library. We've got the Spellbook, so we can potentially stack the top 3 cards of our deck and get something off of Oath there. But if you look, they're just Gear Freed, Oath, and Toon World, none of which actually will get us out of this situation. So that will just be the end of the game. Quite unfortunate that it turned out that way. But that's how this deck goes sometimes, because often, your opponent will have disruption if you can't pull off the FTK turn 1. So, yeah, that's going to be the end of the game. But still, very cool to see this deck sort of go off a little bit in the end there. But hopefully we'll be able to pull it off in game 2. The good thing is if you lose game 1, you're going first in game 2 guaranteed. So hopefully you can pull off the combo there. And this is a pretty good opener. Our opponent forgets that they're not the one going first here. So we're going to put that back on deck. And, they shuffle it in. It doesn't really matter either way there. We're going to go for Painful to start off with. We want to do this before firing Pot and Upstart, just to thin out our deck a bit. We're going to send triple Library, a Premature, and a Monster Reborn. This is a bit awkward because if they give us a Library, which they should, then if we draw Gear Freed, we then have to spell Reproduction back like a Reborn or a Premat. But we can be a little bit less careful with that sort of thing than in the typical Library FTK deck, because we do have Elma in the deck, and if we get Elma on Gear Freed, then we are just winning. They give us Premat, which is actually the best card for us here. Premat is crazy, and if you go up against a Library deck, you do generally just want to give them Library if they send something like this, because Premat can be brought back with True Nade. It also lowers the life points down closer to the goal that you need for Reversal Quiz. And it's just an insane card. So they're going to give us Premat. If they didn't give us Premat and instead gave us Royal Magical Library, then we'd have to normal summon the Library here. We'd have Premat Engrave. We'd be 800 up. But let's just ignore the Premat and assume that we normal summon the Library just to sort of get a sense of what would have happened here. We're going to go for Pot, and we're going to go for Upstart as well. That'd be 2 counters on Library there. We're going to pitch this Thunder Dragon for 2 more Thunder Dragons, which gives us great discard fodder off the Charity here. We're going to go for Charity, draw 3, and we do draw the Gear Freed, so we would have discarded the Gear Freed here off the Charity to set up for a Spell Reproduction later. And as long as we draw 1 Spell Reproduction off this Library, we would have actually been able to win the game because we just get back Breaker. But yeah, let's see when we get that reproduction. Because we've got Organization plus Toon World to go into the next 3 cards here. We do have the Elma as well to equip to Library. We've got Oath as well. We've got Organization there. We get Toon World. We got MST to pop potentially a Toon World, or actually MST pop Dagger is the best thing to do. We got Convulsion to potentially flip the deck over. But yeah, there's a reproduction. I mean, we could have potentially seen whether there was a reproduction on the bottom of the deck. It looks like there might have been eventually. Yeah, it looks like there probably would have been reproduction at the bottom in the last 6 cards at least, because we only drew 2 reproduction here. We haven't used up a reproduction yet, so we would have been able to get a reproduction pretty easily, get back Reborn, Reborned the Gear Freed, and gone for the Elma combo to draw our entire deck. So from this point on, I think we would have been fine. And yeah, so I think we would have still won this game here, even if they gave us the Library just to normal summon out. But with the Premat, I mean, we get to go pretty ham here. Okay, it looks like the Spell Reproduction was 7th from the top. I think that is doable with the multiple Archfiendos. With the True Nade on the bottom of the deck, that's really, really good for this deck. I think we would have won it either way here. But it is good to consider, when you're going for this, or if you're up against this deck, don't give back pre-mat by any means. But we do indeed draw the pendant here, and now we got to get a little bit creative. We got to Trunade back these, pre-mat and Toon World, all that stuff. Go for Toon Worlds to, cost us more life points. Go for the pendant, and now we go for Reversal Quiz. We know the last card in our deck is a spell since we've gone through every monster in the deck. And we have to send everything from our side of the field and hand to the graveyard. So Black Pen will have been sent to the graveyard off that. And we see what's on top of our deck. It is indeed a spell card. So we'll switch life points. We go up to 9,000. They go down to 400. And now on a new chain, since Pendant's been sent to the graveyard, Pendant will deal 500 damage to them. And that will be the end of the game. So that's pretty much how the deck works. I do think that we would have indeed won that even if they had given us the library, which was the worst for us to get there. But, we're going into game 3. Hopefully we can actually manage to pull it off going second here. Let's see what happens. And this is a pretty good opener, all things considered. Not the best opener because we don't really have much gas to start out with, but we got Rhoda to bring out Gearfried. And, we can take a little bit of time with this deck as, losing life points is actually good for us. They're going to send 5 interesting ones here. I think we do just give them the Heavy Storm because Heavy Storm didn't do anything to us on our turn. So we want to give them that because we're just going to try and go for it on our turn at some point. They're just going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw Turnate. We're going to go for Thunder Dragon here, get 2 Thunder Dragons. And we could potentially go for Gearfried here. And I am just going to go for the Gearfried, decked in a little bit. And also, at the end of the turn, we do have to pitch for hand size. And we're just going to pitch this Gearfried. Get it in graveyard for like a Reborn play or something. I don't really want to commit to the board and attack in because if that set is something like Spy or Saying In, I don't want to give them fuel to get more stuff. It is indeed Saying In, so I'm glad I didn't hit in. They're going to summon out a Witch as well, attack in for 2,100, pass back to us. We draw a Library, which is pretty good. We're going to think about this. We can't quite just go for Library here and go for the big play. And we could do Library, Toon World, Trunade, Toon World, but that's really awkward. So I don't want to do that. And yeah, I'm just going to pass back to them until we get a little bit more gas. We got to pitch a Thunder Dragon for turn here. They're going to go for Lily though, and that is really, really worrying. Now our Oaths are all offline. And yeah, I was hoping that this wouldn't end up happening. We draw an Oath. It is indeed dead. Our Toon World is also dead. And we are in a really, really rough spot. We're just going to summon out this library, see what happens. They've got Toronto Tribute, so that will pop the entire field. They will be able to get a Zalug and a Breaker. And we just got to sort of go for a desperate play here. And we are just going to go for Reversal Quiz, calling Spell. Now, this is generally not how you want to do this, but our opponent is at 6,000. We're at 400. If they drop down to 400 because of this, and we manage to draw Black Pendant, manage to potentially draw MST to pop the Black Pendant, then we can potentially win the game through that way. So not typically how the deck wants to win, but it is a potential option in an extreme case like this. So we're going to call Spell. We reveal the spell. And fun fact about Reversal Quiz, it doesn't draw you the card. It just reveals the top card of the deck. So we currently have no cards. Our opponent does know what we're drawing next. Painful Choice is a pretty good draw there as it can deck thin. It can get us something. It can protect us for a little bit. But they're going to go for the Breaker there. Attack in for 1,900. Pass back to us. We draw Painful. We got to go for Painful here. And this is a big thing. We don't quite have anything that wins us the game here, but we're just going to send the Libraries, a Fiber Jar, Cyber Jar, and we're just going to send an Organization as the last card here. I figure, any of the monsters here protect us for a bit. The Organization gets us to, sort of sort the top cards of our deck, potentially draw into something good. We could have also just gone double Organization, Pot, Graceful, and maybe Card Destruct or Upstart. No, but we don't want Upstart because Upstart gets us out of the life point range that we need them to be in. So yeah, I don't think there was another good set to send there, really. They're going to give us the Library. That is okay by us. We wall up a bit, pass back to them, and they're going to fire Pot of Greed here, draw 2, and they likely have a knock or something. They've got Change of Heart that's effectively a knock. They're going to flip up that Library, attack in for 3,500. Now, the funny thing is, if they want to pop the Library with the Tribes effect, they will be popping their Breaker as well. So a little bit awkward for them. They are indeed just going to do it. Clear both those cards. Pass back to us. We draw Premat, which is indeed dead with only 600 life points. And it probably wouldn't have helped us that much here either way. But we're just going to set that as a bluff. Pass back to them. And they're going to go for the heavy that we knew about, and that will indeed be the end of the game. So, very interesting games here. It was cool to see the deck pop off in game 2. It can indeed win if it is going first occasionally, but also it does brick occasionally, as we saw in game 1. That's why the side deck is important for this. You generally want to side into other things, but because the package to make this deck work is so large, it is often tough to sort of side out of it completely. So very interesting sort of match with this deck. And because it was glitching, earlier, let's just go into solo mode and see some test hands to see how it does. Okay, we're in solo mode with the deck, and this is not the best hand. We draw. Oh, Thunder Dragon isn't bad. We can pitch that. Get 2 more Thunder Dragons, but this might be a case where we just like set Fiber Jar pass, or set Cyber Jar pass. We're just gonna go for Graceful here. We could potentially fire Rhoda first. That might be the move. Actually, I'm gonna fire Rhoda first. Go for Rhoda, thin the deck a little bit, and this also gets a Gearfried Engrave, so I think that's pretty good. We're going to go for Graceful here. Draw 3. 1, 2, 3. We do indeed draw the Ooh, that's actually pretty good. We draw Library, we draw Oath, we draw Trunade, and so this is going to be pretty good for us. So we're going to go for Library here, activate Oath, activate Toon World, take 1,000 from that. Now, normally, like, this is a bit risky, so honestly, I might have just set Cyberjar here instead of going for the play. But, this is just to sort of show what the deck can do at its most extreme. We're going to pay 500 for Oath, and we got to think about exactly what to call here, but I think we want to call Convulsion, because Convulsion would be best for us, and also it is at 3. So we're going to call Convulsion. We're going to mill the top card of our deck, see what we get. Unfortunately, it's Elma that will stay engraved there, and that's really unfortunate for us. I mean, we can go for Trunade here. That does put Library at 3 copies. Add the Toon World and the Oath to hand. Draw a card off Library here. And we draw another Library. That's really bad for us. Yeah, so this is why you go for Fiber Jar or Cyber Jar if you don't quite have the gas for that. But now we're going to call, like, what's best for us here? Trunade, I believe, is best. Yeah, unfortunately, it's card destruction. And Library only has 2 counters. So that will be that game there. So that test stand didn't quite work out the best. But hopefully over the course of these, we'll get some good ones. And this is a pretty good start. We're going to pitch the Thunder Dragon. Grab 2 more Thunder Dragons here. And remember, since Thunder Dragon can fail to find, these Thunder Dragons can just work as deck shufflers if we need them to be. We're going to go for Pot now, draw 2. And Painful is really good, especially when we have a Reborn in hand. So we're going to go for that Painful. We are going to send triple Library. 1, 2, 3. We're going to send a Fiber Jar and a Cyber Jar as well. We're going to send those. They might give us a Library. They probably won't, though, because Library is the best for us. So they're probably going to give us like a Cyber Jar or Fiber Jar. Let's assume they give us a Cyber Jar. Because that is, I think, the best option. We're going to go for Reborn here, bring back a Library in defense, and we're going to fire a Reinforce from the Army here. So this will be going for Gearfried. Unfortunately, this is kind of an awkward hand. We might have just wanted to send triple Library and then double Spell. That might have been a bit better off the Painful. And these are things to consider, but this is a little bit awkward because we got 1 counter on that. In order to actually, do this combo well, we need to do... we need to set the Reversal Quiz, activate Trunade, and then chain MST to Trunade, targeting Trunade. And this will put 3 counters on Library. It will, send these to grave, add Reversal Quiz to hand, and then we will get to draw off Library. If we draw Elma, we just win. Unfortunately, Rhoda won't quite do it, and so that will be the end of that journey there. But, as I said, like, you're not going to get all winners with this deck, and it can also, be pretty bad. Oh, this is really bad. I mean, this is just setting up for next turn with the organization. So we're just going to reset the deck. See what we get again. And this is the fun of, like, playing an FTK deck, is that you get to test a lot, which is pretty nice. So we're going to go for Thunder Dragon here, send a Thunder Dragon. Grab 2 more Thunder Dragons from deck to hand. 1 Thunder Dragon, 2 Thunder Dragons. And now we're going to bring out this Royal Magical Library here. Go for the Painful choice there. See what we want to send off this. We want to send monsters because we got card destruction. So we're just going to send Fiber Jar, Library, Cyber Jar, Library. That's 4. We might not want to send Gearfried because Gearfried, like Rhoda with Gearfried's really good. It's a little bit awkward here. I think maybe a Rhoda instead of just the Gearfried, because Rhoda can get us Gearfried. But it also Rhoda's a spell for later. Yeah, I'm just gonna send Rhoda. And they're probably gonna give us like, I mean, we've already normal summoned this turn, so they can give us like a library and be fine with that. 1 less library and grave to revive. So pretty good there. We are going to set 2, also 1 counter on library because of the painful. Then we're gonna fire this card destruction here, pitching 3. And this will be the second counter on a library here. And we will draw 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, those are pretty good draws there. Not gonna lie. We're gonna activate this Archfiend Oath, just get a 3rd counter on library. Draw off that. Take off that counter there. This is really good. I mean, you know, with the Reborn, I kind of wish that we had the Gearfried engraved there. Would have been pretty nice. We're gonna go for Graceful though. See what we get. 1, 2, 3. I mean, we're gonna pitch the MST for sure. I think we might also pitch the Pendant. Now, Pendant's really good. Also, this will be the first copy or first counter on library there. So we're gonna pitch this MST for sure, and we're gonna pitch. Oh, actually, I misplayed. I should have gone Reborn for library here. Oh, no, I think I played this fine. No, actually, I think Reborn for library would have been best here. Yeah, I think I misplayed because Reborn for library, we don't quite have the Elma combo, but if you can get 2 libraries on field, that's generally the end of the game here either way. So yeah, I misplayed this, but you're seeing like live how this deck works a bit. But as is now, I think we want to send maybe the Upstart, honestly. Yeah, Upstart probably is the best option there. But yeah, we misplayed a little bit. We should have Reborn for library there. As is, I can go for Reborn now. Bring back the library. So this will put 1 counter on this library. If we had Reborn for the library, there'd be another counter on this now. For the Graceful. We can fire another Oath here. Get a 3rd counter on library. 1 counter on this library. Take off 3 counters. Draw 1. Reproduction is kind of funny. We actually might go for Reproduction here. Pitching Reproduction and a Pendant to get back Graceful, probably. Yeah, let's just... I think that is probably the play. So, because we need a way to, you know, make our Oath more live. So we're going to do that. If we had brought back the library off of Reborn, we could have activated Pendant on one of these libraries. And, you know, gotten 3 counters on that and been fine here. Unfortunately, we didn't quite do that. And, you know, that's coming back to bite us a little bit. We're going to go for Charity here. Draw 3. 1, 2, 3. Trunade is just so good here, but pitching a Reproduction loses us the game. So yeah, we can't keep the Trunade. So yeah, this wouldn't have been an issue here if we had done this the right way. But unfortunately we didn't, and now we're in a really bad spot. So we probably will indeed lose this one. But, Convulsion actually can get us back into this a bit. We're going to put another counter on library here. Flip over the top of the deck. You know, just draw with that. There we go. We're going to use up 1 copy of Oath. Oh, I should be at 8,000 at this point. So 2,500. And then we're going to use 1 copy of Oath to get this Reversal Quiz to hand. And then we're going to go for the other copy of Oath to grab this Tomb World to hand. And now, these libraries shouldn't be at the same counter amount. So I messed up somewhere in placing the counters on them. But let's say, like, there's 1 counter on one. Because there should be at least 1 counter on one of them. We go for Repro here on the Convulsion and the Toon World. And we have to get back... Yeah, we can't quite do it here. Unfortunate. I think I misplayed. If I'd played that a little bit differently with the Reborn and the Library, then I think we would have been fine there. But unfortunately, it didn't quite work out that way. Also, when testing, you got to be careful of, having the deck flipped from Convulsion and Oath. But yeah, we opened Convulsion, Oath, plus, True Nade, so that's pretty good. We're going to go for that. We are going to pitch this Thunder Dragon, add more Thunder Dragons to the deck here. Two hand, and, ooh, that's not really that good. So we are going to pitch this Thunder Dragon, search our deck for another Thunder Dragon. We don't have one, so that'll shuffle that up. Reproduction isn't bad. It's just not the best, so we're just going to pitch this again, shuffle up the deck again, and that is exactly what we were waiting for. So we're going to pay 5, call Library. We're going to add that to hand. We're going to summon that Library. We are going to activate a Toon World. We should be 1,000 higher here. But now we're 1,000 lower because of Toon World. So we're going to do that. Get another counter on Library. We're going to go for True Nade here. So that'll be another counter on Library. Add to hand, to hand, to hand. Flip the deck over. I don't really want to draw Reversal Quiz right now, so I'm going to go for Oath here. Draw off the Library. Ooh, that's kind of a bad draw as well. I can activate Convulsion now. That puts another counter on Library. Flip over the deck. I can pay 5 for the Oath, draw the Reversal Quiz, and that's pretty good, that Upstart Goblin. So I'm going to pay 1,000 for Toon World here. Put a counter on Library. Now I do need that third spell counter. I've already paid for Oath, so I'm just going to go for MST on Toon World. A little bit awkward. We want the Toon Worlds to be around for our life point costs, but we do what we got to do. We're going to draw off the Library there, get an Upstart Goblin, and that's honestly not bad. We're going to go for Upstart. This will put 1 counter on our Library. Our opponent, or we draw a card. And let's see what's engraved. I mean, we've just got Thunder Dragon, so this won't quite do it. So we didn't quite make it yet again. I don't want to just spend the whole video doing these sorts of library replays, but hopefully this sort of showed you what the deck can be like and how much it can brick, but also how you need to constantly be thinking of the best play here. It's a very, very difficult deck to pilot. I think the sort of last hand that we drew could have potentially won the game, but unfortunately we misplayed it. And yeah, it's very, very tough to play, but it can indeed pull off the Gearfried Elma combo, as we did see in the match. So with that out of the way, let's dive into our next game and our next deck, because, I'm sure you're all tired of seeing this library FTK nonsense. Okay, next deck we've got here is Empty Jar. Now, Empty Jar is another sort of deck that's running around GOAT format as well, and it is very similar to its modern GOAT format form. Some differences that we do have is that, we've got double Morphing Jar here, so we can play 2 of that in this deck. We got Reborn to potentially bring back one of these guys, book it down, be good that way. But ultimately it's relatively the same overall. I am playing things like Drag Down here because it's really good in this deck. Get your opponent 1 card deeper into their deck. Sets up for Shallow Grave, as you do need a monster in both players' graveyards to use Shallow Grave. And also we got Painful here, which is great. Just send all your jars for the Shallow Grave. Really, really good stuff. So I think this deck is pretty good. A couple things to note in the side deck. You got Soul Releases plus Fiber Jar. That's another way you can play this deck, is basically Soul Releasing your opponent's graveyard, shuffling back the deck with Fiber Jar and going through it that way. Fiber Jar is really annoying for the Empty Jar deck, as if you do get them very low on cards, they could potentially just set a Fiber Jar, reset the game, and be good that way. But, if you're going for your combo, you're likely going to stack their hand up with Cyber Jars, Morphing Jars, etc., and then go for a card destruction play. So ideally, you won't have to deal with Fiber Jar, but it can indeed come up. But basically, going through the card by card here, we got 1 Cyber Jar, double Morphing Jar. We are playing 2 Morphing Jar number 2. This is a little bit iffy, I think, because it can mill you. If your opponent doesn't attack into it, you've got to flip it up on your own and do it that way. So a bit iffy, but it can, get your opponent a bit deeper into their deck. Mill cards like Knock or other powerful spells. So I do think it's fine. It's just not necessarily the best. We get Mystic Tomatoes here. Mystic Tomatoes is a little bit awkward in this format due to DD Warrior Lady. But at least they're using the DD Warrior Ladies on the Tomatoes, so it's ultimately fine. And we can go into a Sangam. We can go into a Cyber Jar, set it down with Book, and then flip it back up with Tayu potentially. So I think that Tomato's okay, ultimately. And we've also got these 3 Thunder Dragons here. This, works well with Graceful, works well with card destruction, etc. We've got Triple Book of Moon, Triple Book of Tayu. Basically, the idea of this deck is getting these monsters on your side of the field set and then tying them up on your turn to use their effects, get more cards to continue your combo. We get card destruction, which is basically the win con of the game. You're trying to mill your opponent out, and card destruction is a great way to do it after their hand is bulked up from things like Cyberjar. Now, there's no serial spell in this format, so unfortunately, card destruction is not quite as powerful as it will be in GOAT. But, you know, this is still a decent combo. You just have to be a little bit more careful. We got triple drag down to the grave. As I mentioned, this is a great way to draw cards on your own and set up for shallow grave. We've got triple Trunade, which, you know, if your opponent set a bunch of cards, you can Trunade them back to hand, bulk up their hand size a bit, and also, you know, just clear the way for your own combos. We got Graceful, we got Monster Reborn, we got triple MST here. Maybe triple MST isn't quite worth it. It's mainly for IO, because IO does shut down this deck really well. So you want the triple MST to deal with the Imperial Order to stop that in case your opponent does have that. But maybe it's not the best here. I don't know. Further testing is needed for this deck for sure. Painful Choice as well to set up your jars. Pot of Greed, Spell Reproduction ×3 to get back things like Book of Tayu, like Book of Moon. And you'll likely have this online if you're drawing off of like Morphing Jar and Cyber Jar, etc. So I do think it's pretty good that way. We've also got Triple Shallow Grave here as well. Set up your monsters on field. We got an Upstart Goblin, and we've got an Imperial Order. The Imperial Order is kind of the 40th slot here, and I figure, you know, this is a good way to stop things like Moment of Crossout, Raigeki, Darkle, etc. Things that can get rid of your jars if you need them to go off. For the side deck, we've got a bit of a Fiber Jar plus Soul Release conversion side into that version of the deck. I don't think that version of the deck is as good, but it can be good in decks like that are playing Fiber Jar and are, you know, shuffling everything back and resetting your progress. We got Harpy's Feather Duster for back row heavy decks. We've got Mirage Nightmare here in case we want to go for the draws with the MSTs. But given you're playing things like Morphic Jar, like Cyber Jar, you likely are going to have more than 4 cards in your hand a lot. So that's why Mirage isn't quite in the main deck. We got triple Gravity Bind here to slow down the game. We got triple Royal Decree against burn decks. And we got triple Solemn Judgment here. Just as like sort of a flexible option that we can bring in, potentially if our opponents bring in hate against this deck in games 2 and 3, which is a major flaw in this deck. There are a lot of hate cards for it. But with that, let's dive into some games and see how this deck actually does. Okay, we got a game here against Soul65. We frequently get to the channel. Always a pleasure to have them on. We're going to go into the rock, paper, scissors here. And this is an intense rock, paper, scissors. We do want to go first in case we can combo off, and it looks like we will indeed be going first. So we're going to go first here. We draw a pretty stacked opening hand. Unfortunately, we can't quite set up for a shallow grave right now. We could Painful Choice in like a ton of our jars in the graveyard, but our opponent doesn't need a monster in grave for shallow grave to actually work. So what we're going to do here instead is we're just going to set a Morphing Jar number 2. If they do the common play of summoning out like DD Warrior Lady, attacking into the Morphing Jar number 2, then I feel pretty sad about that. But they're going to think about this a bit. They're just going to set one of their own pass back decks. We draw Drag Down, which can indeed set up the Shallow Grave combo. So we're going to think about this, and we're going to think, you know, hard. It is a tricky choice. We're just going to fire the Morphing Jar number 2. Now, this was an option I didn't have to do here, as it does mill some cards for us as well. But I want to get them milling. I also, you know, want to see what they're on a bit. So I figured it's ultimately fine. And also, if we get a jar set, we can tie it up. So honestly, not the worst. Unfortunately, we just hit a tomato. So tomatoes are kind of awkward. And it looks like they are on a, you know, maybe Elma FTK, but some form of library FTK of their own. So we hit 2 of those cards. And that is yeah, this is a weird matchup for us. Empty Jar is honestly a little bit better into more aggressive decks, I think. But we're going to go for a Painful Choice here. We're going to send 4 jars, and we're going to debate about sending the Cyber Jar, and we ultimately don't. I think there's a major misplay on my part. I should have actually, you know, sent Cyber Jar as well to have off Shallow Grave in case we wanted it. As Cyber Jar is just so good at buffing up their hand for the card destruction coming later in the game. But I don't do that, and I think that actually does cost us the game here. We can still go a little bit for the combo. Even without the Cyber Jar, but it is much more awkward. They give us a Morphing Jar number 2 here, which is obviously not the best for us here. We're just going to set 3, and then we're going to fire this Shallow Grave here to get back the Morphing Jar here. So we're going to go for that, and you know, they get back the Thunder Dragon because they have to. We're going to go Book of Tayu on the Morphing Jar, discard our hand there, discard their hand, and we're going to draw 5. And we draw Thunder Dragon, which is honestly pretty decent as well. So, we got to think about this because we could go potentially a little bit aggressive here. You know, we're going to pitch the Thunder Dragon, grab 2 more Thunder Dragons. But if we want to go aggressive, we could like summon out 1, attack over their Thunder Dragon, get in for damage. But ultimately, I think, we don't necessarily want to do that. Now I make a major misplay here as well. I go for reproduction first. This isn't the misplay. We grab back Tayu. And then I choose to go drag down first. This is a bit of a misplay on my part, I think. They pitch a Thunder Dragon out of our hand. We pitch a library. We do draw one here. And the misplay is tribute summoning our Thunder Dragon. We do this to get a Morphing Jar Engraved, but we already have a Morphing Jar Engraved, so I didn't need to do that. I needed to save my normal summon for later, and unfortunately I didn't do that, and you'll see why that's a problem later in the game. And I go for damage here. I also can't flip up the tomato as this was summoned this turn, so, misplays out the wazoo here. But, I go for Shallow Grave here, get back the jar. They get back a library. And, I got to basically win this turn. I go for jar here. I do set the Trinade beforehand, though. We both draw 5. We draw Graceful, and we draw some other good ones as well. We're going to go for Graceful here, draw 3. And we draw Card Destruction as well, so that's pretty good. We're going to pitch an MST and a Book of Moon. We've already got one Book of Moon, so we don't need the other here. We have to think a bit about this because it's a bit awkward. We've got 2 back row here. The Trinade aren't really doing anything for us right now. So we are just going to, book our Morphing Jar there, fire Trinade, grab back Trinade to hand, set a bunch, and then we're going to tie you up the Morphing Jar, draw another 5. And we do draw the Cyber Jar there, so that means that we will potentially have access to it later in the game. And for the card destruction play here, we actually kind of do need the Cyber Jar to resolve at least once. Cyber Jar resolving once will get them 5 more cards in hand. They'll have 11 left in deck, but 10 in hand, hopefully. And that will potentially be just, the end of the game for them. Drag downs will also help get us to that threshold. So we're going to think about this, and we are going to, have to really think about this a lot. We're going to go for spell reproduction, grabbing back a Book of Tayu. We're going to Trinade back everything to hand here to clear up the back row space. We're going to set a bunch. That was a misclick. We meant to set the Tayu, and we're going to fire this drag down into the grave, so that way they'll pitch the Cyber Jar. We do also draw off that, which is important as we're running low on deck cards of our own. We had some lag, so there were some difficulties with all this. And I basically my screen was uninteractive. So yeah. So we just grab repro. We're going to Shallow Grave this Cyber Jar here. They're going to grab that Thunder Dragon. We're going to Book of Tayu the Cyber Jar there. And this means that they'll go 5 deeper into our deck. We'll go 5 deeper into our deck. We have 1 card left in deck. And this is why the normal summon does count. Because I'm thinking okay, all the monsters are out of my deck here. But, unfortunately, there is 1 left as the last card, which is why we had to save the normal summon. We can indeed card destruction with no cards in hand. And so if we cleared out our hand and then went for card destruction, then we would have been fine. But alas, we can't quite do that. And, also, they do hit a Gearfried here, I believe. So that means that they won't quite have 10 cards in hand. They'll have 9, which is why we do need to go for drag down here off the spell repro and then go for card destruction. So yeah, we go for repro here, pitching pot and upstart. Those are not really useful for us anymore. We grab this drag down here. We go for drag down. They pitch a Tayu and they draw 1 deeper into their deck, that is. And if we had saved our normal summon here, then we would have indeed been able to win here, as we would have, normal summoner set the tomato, set our hand, gone for card destruction. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cards in hand. They've got 9 cards in deck. They draw their entire deck, and then they lose to deck out next turn. As is, we have to keep the tomato in hand right now. We've got no other ways to discard it. And so we won't be able to activate card destruction, and this will be the end of the game. So yeah, very, very unfortunate. I messed up a lot. Based on, I think, just my newness to the deck. But you can see here how the deck would have won this game if I had, not misplayed with the Thunder Dragon. Maybe if I had gone for the Cyber Jar earlier as well, it also would have helped. That's going to be game 1. I hope that does show the power of Empty Jar, even if I did fumble the ball at the sort of end goal. I mean, I don't know sports. But yeah, we're going to go into game 2. I don't really side. I think I side... No, I don't really side because it's against Library, it's we basically got to win early or hope that they lose. So we're just going to set a bunch and pass back to them. I mean, we're just going to show both because they're a Library deck. So we get, I feel like it's more elucidating this way to see what they're doing. So it's basically more Library gameplay if you weren't already tired of that. I'm going to go for the Thunder Dragon, which is indeed correct there. They're going to fire a Trinade, bouncing our cards back to hand. I guess you kind of have to do that for IO, but I mean, I don't really like that the most. Like, what's your opponent gonna have is disruption. Like TT, something like that. I mean, you can just save the Trinade for later. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I think it's like ultimately fine. It's just that Trinade's such a high value card. You don't necessarily want to be using it this early. And if it's like IO, like you fire card destruction, you set a bunch of fire card destruction first, they fire IO, like your turn's over anyways. So like, yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. But they fire card destruction. They're gonna think about this a bit. They're gonna bring out the library, go for painful choice here, and send 4 monsters and send Spellbook Organization. And we're just going to give them gear free. They've already normal summoned this turn, so, you know, any monster in hand is basically a brick. They're going to go for Graceful here, so they can pitch the gear free, which is honestly fine. I mean, it's better to give them that than give them a spell that they could actually use. They're going to set 2, go for Drag Down. We've got to pitch their Drag Down. They're going to pitch our Tomato. They draw into a Reproduction. Library does get them a draw here. And they're going to go for... They're thinking about it. They're thinking about exactly what the play is here. They can't activate either of the repros. They got to fire like one of the Trunades that they've got set there. A little bit awkward though. They're going to Trunade. They can then repro, pitch 2, grab the Graceful. That'll be 2 counters on Library. They're going to go for Graceful. And yeah, really awkward because, you know, you've used up 2 repro. If you pitch that repro, then you can't get back the pendant. So yeah, you kind of need to keep the pendant here. And they are indeed going to keep the pendant. So, you know, that library will be at 3 copies, and, you know, they can fire Convulsion, but they don't quite have another draw here. They're going to set the pendant, attack in to our set. It is Morphing Jar, so they will draw 5 here, which does get them slightly back into the game, so that's something. But at this point in the game, they don't quite have enough life point cost cards to actually get themselves down to the point where Reversal Quiz OTK can kill us here. So, yeah. So, you know, we do get to know each other's hands because Convulsion's up when this happens. But, yeah, this will be the end of the game. Unless they are playing, like, Exodia in their deck, this is just the end of the game. Because you don't have enough to actually do the Pendant Reverse Quiz stuff. And that will be it. So, yeah, Game 2, kind of unfortunate to see the Library deck falter like that. But it's kind of funny, you know, we saw Game 1, I lost that because I messed up with the combo. Game 2, you know, they messed up with the combo, so it's like, these decks are very hard to play, and you get to see that very well in this sort of match. Now, they will be going first in Game 3, so they do have an option to potentially win with the FTK here. And, I mean, they've got a great hand for doing that. Wow. They're going to go for the... you know, Royal Magic Library. They're going to fire Convulsion first, is correct. You want the reinforcements here to shuffle up your deck if you want it. They're going to go for Spellbook Organization. I think I would have gone for reinforcements first before going for Organization, because you shuffle up the deck more thoroughly, and you're going to do this eventually anyways, so... But there is an Oath in the top couple, so it turned out to be the right play for them because the Oath is in the top 3. They're going to go for Oath there. You know, they get a draw off of Library there. They're going to fire the Reinforcement the Army, grab the gear free, shuffle up the deck. They're going to go for Oath, you know, draw that Convulsion there. They're going to go for Oath, and they're going to draw the... I thought Library was on top. I guess I just saw the top card. They're going to go for Charity. Go for Charity, draw 3, and then they get to pitch the gear free, pitch a drag down, which isn't really quite that useful for them. They are going to then draw off the Library, grab another Convulsion. They're going to spell repro, pitch these 2 copies of Convulsion, grab a Charity here. They're going to go for Charity, draw 3, and unfortunately they draw the Thunder Dragon there. But yeah, they're going to pitch a Toon World and a drag down. They're going to go for Thunder Dragon, shuffle up the deck a little bit, and see what they get on top. Saying get on top, not the best. I mean, they can go for another Thunder Dragon to potentially get that out of there, but it looks like they're just going to bite the bullet and draw it. They're going to then go for Archfiend's Oath, and okay, I guess the top card of the deck is just like misregistering sometimes. So, and this is why we did some solo runs in the video as well. But they're going to go for Painful here, and they're going to grab a Library. They're going to send a bunch there. Or, I mean, we give them a Library because they can't summon it, so it's just a dead card in their hand, basically. They've got a Trunade, though, and, you know, they should be fine with Convulsion or Oath, and Trunade there. I mean, This is about as good as you can get for the library deck. They're going to go for pot, draw 2, and they should be fine here even like if they don't set up the Elma loop. They're going to go for convulsion as well. They're going to get some more draws in here. Now, they do have to get themselves down to a point where they are down below 500. So they're going to go for another oath here. They're going to reborn back the Gearfried because now they basically get to simplify it a bit. They've got infinite draws off the dagger. So, they can just draw however many they want to. And yeah, the top is definitely glitched because we're seeing cards that, there are more than 3 of in the deck. So they're going to draw a bunch, drawn to Premat, and with double spell reproduction, Trunade, Premat, they should be fine because they can reproduction back for a Toon World. They've got Premat as well. So yeah, they're going to draw that last card there. So now the oaths are offline, but you don't, again, you've got spell repro for Toon World. You can Trunade back the board, and then you can fire some Toon Worlds and fire some Premats as well. And so this should be enough to get them there. This is also another reason why Premat is important. Another very powerful sort of life point reduction card. So yeah, they're going to go for a Toon World, go for another Premat. And now all they need is just one more Trunade off that spell repro, activate one more Toon World, and that should be the end of the game. They do indeed activate that one last Toon World. They go for Reversal Quiz here. They know the last card in deck is indeed a Toon World. So they're just going to call a spell. It is indeed a spell. And that will be the end of the game. So, this didn't really get to show off Empty Jar that much, but it did show off more library. And it did show off another build of it. You can play Drag Downs if you want to. I'm not the biggest fan of Drag Down. I think it's, a bit too awkward of a card in the deck. I like MSTs better, especially like into IO. But I do think that like Drag Down is fine. It's like a fine card in the build. I also don't really like Sangan in here. But again, like Sangan is like fine. It's basically replacing Fiber Jar. But yeah, it's cool to see different builds with this deck. And I do think that the deck is like somewhat decent. Probably not going to, win any tournaments anytime soon, but it's cool to see that this deck is still somewhat playable in this format. But since this didn't really show off Empty Jar that well, let's dive into another game that hopefully will show it off better. Okay, we got a game against PJ Darkness here, playing Empty Jar yet again. We're going to dive into it. Hopefully, I can pull off the combo a bit better this time. But, yeah, let's see how we do. We draw a Pot of Greed to start. That's really good. We draw a Morphing Jar number 2 as well. That's also pretty decent. We're going to set the Morphing Jar number 2, set this MST, pass back to our opponent here. I feel like MST is a pretty good bluff to set. They fire Comfy right away, so they see that we're on something degenerate. They're going to take the Spell Reproduction, pitch that from the hand, and they're going to go for Pot of Greed here, draw 2. And they're going to summon out a DD Warrior Lady. That's fine by us because Morphing Jar number 2 will shuffle it back into the deck. It will also go to Grave. You can't do the banish thing for Morphing Jar number 2, I believe, because just like with Fiber Jar, the DD Warrior Lady will be shuffled back in the deck, so it can't banish from that position. They send a fair amount of spells, and they send a Fiber Jar as well. So they got Fiber Jar online. Yeah, not quite looking best for us. They're going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw Drag Down at least. That's, another way to dig into our deck a little bit. We're just going to go for Trunade here. Send everything back to hand. Fire Card Destruction here, pitching all 4 because we do just need to draw deep, I think. And we see that they're on a bit of an interesting strategy. They're on a strategy using Mene the Thorn, which is a very interesting Dark Scorpion monster. Lets you get continual advantage off of searching out Mene the Thorn, getting it from grave, things like that. So it's sort of like a resource engine, and cool to see. So our opponent will draw 5 there. We are going to pitch this Thunder Dragon here, get 2 more Thunder Dragons to hand, and we've got Morphing Jar number 2, so it might be just good to set that, or just summon it and attack into the Fiber Jar. But yeah, we're just going to pitch those 2 Thunder Dragons here. And if we had Tayu, we actually would be fine because we could set Cyber Jar and then flip it up with Tayu, pop their monster, and be fine. But yeah, as is, I'm just going to set this Morphing Jar, set this MST, pass back to them. I think maybe in hindsight, I should have just summoned out the Morphing Jar number 2, attacked into the Fiber Jar, triggered on my turn, so at least I'd be able to set up for things. But I don't know. That just seems kind of awkward. I wouldn't get a normal summoner set. So it's a bit weird. They've got Knock here, which is very unfortunate for our Morphing Jar number 2. Also unfortunate that they're main decking Knock. So Morphing Jar number 2 will get banished, but the other Morphing Jar number 2 is in grave at least. So we still have that. But yeah, they will get a turn just to attack in here. So I think I probably should have just triggered Fiber Jar on my turn, because they get a turn to attack in either way. At least this way they don't like go for the Knock play there. So yeah, a bit awkward on my part. I think I misplayed that, but yeah, it's tough to say. Fiber Jar is just such a weird card to go up against for the empty jar strategy. So kind of unfortunate that they hit that, but it is what it is, and that happens sometimes. So we draw a pretty good opener here. Unfortunately, they have duo to rip this apart a little bit. They're going to send the tomato, and we're going to think about this, send an MST. If they've got IO, they've got IO. I mean, we probably can't survive through that anyways. So they've got DD War Lady here to go in for 1500 damage, and we will take that. They're going to set 1, set 2, pass back to us. We draw a giant grenade here. We're going to go for graceful first because they've got IO, we lose. So we're draw 3 here. We're going to think about exactly what to pitch. And I think I want to pitch an MST and a Spell Repro. We can just set the Morphing Jar number 2 here. But first we're going to go for a Trinade, bounce back those cards to hand. We'll set the Morphing Jar number 2, activate Drag Down, pitch this Shallow Grave. We're going to set a knock. I'll show you what they got. They didn't have that Torrential in hand, but they had the Ring and the Sangan there. So we get to see that at least. And we draw a Tomato, pass back to them. They are going to attack into our Morphing Jar number 2. That will trigger, shuffle back the DD Warrior Lady into deck, and unfortunately they hit a monster right away. That's another flaw with Morphing Jar number 2. Maybe a reason not really to play it, as it's definitely your least intimidating jar. We're going to set a Tomato, also set the Spell Reproduction, which is a bit of a brick here as a bluff. They're going to flip up Sangan. They are going to fire a TT on that, so they will clear our monster and get another Mayne the Thorn. They'll summon a Yada, and that will be the end of the game because we can't deal with that, and we will just eventually lose that way. So cool to see Mayne take a game, or Mine, I guess. I've always said Mayne, like, they got a whip, so watch them Mayne, right? But we're going to be going first here, and unfortunately this is not the best hand. We're just going to set a bunch and hope that this drag down will be good. We're going to pitch this Reborn because, we don't have any monsters engraved to Reborn here, so we also get to look at their hand. And we are going to pitch the Yada because, Reborn can get back DD Warrior later saying it. I mean, we got IO for Reborn here either way, so not the worst. But yeah, I think Yada is the most threatening. So we draw a Morphing Jar number 2, which is really good. We're just going to set that, pass back to our opponent, and they're going to go for a set of their own, set 2, pass back to us. We draw Drag Down again. We're going to think about this a little bit. We're going to Trinade back everything to hand, just to sort of, play around the TT and stuff. We're going to flip up this Morphing Jar number 2, shuffle everything back. We will be potentially milling here. They mill a DD Warrior Lady right away, so they don't have to worry about that. We mill Card Destruction, Painful, Graceful, Book, and Thunder Dragon. So, this is showing how Morphing Jar number 2 can really come back to bite you. It's just kind of unfortunate there. We're going to set to fire this Drag Down on the Soul Release. We did decide into the Soul Release Fiber Jar package, given that they are on a Mayne package here. They had Tribe, DD Warrior Lady, Forceful, and Reborn there. And, they've got one Mayne left. We draw Pot of Greed, which is really good. We draw 2 Shallow Graves, which I don't think we can activate it now. They do have a monster engrave in the form of Yada, but, that can't be special summoned. So I don't think we can activate this. We might be able to because the cost just said each player targets 1 monster in their own graveyard. So we might have been able to activate it here. In that case, I think we just get back a Thunder Dragon, so it wouldn't really be that good. But we go for Drag Down here, pitch the Shallow Grave. We see their hand again. We're going to pitch the Reborn, just give them 1 last spell to use. Although we get the IO for the Reborn, so actually we just send Tribe instead. Yeah, we sort of reconsidered that. This also turns on our Shallow Grave here. We got Spell Reproduction, which is unfortunately a brick here, and we're just going to pass back to our opponent. They are going to flip up the DD Warrior Lady, summon out a Sangan, and they're going to Forceful back the Spell Repro. We just let that go through. We do have IO, but we don't want to use the IO on a card that isn't really that bad for us because Spell Repro is probably going to be dead for the rest of the game, given our life points and our situation. So we just want to shuffle that back. We set a Fiber Jar here, pass back to them, and they are going to go for the DD Warrior Lady attack in. It is Fiber Jar, so that will shuffle everything back here. And yeah, Morphing Jar number 2 would have gone pretty good on this board with 2 monsters, but unfortunately, didn't draw that. But Fiber Jar is still decent, shuffles everything back. They haven't normal summoned or set this turn though, so they will be able to commit a monster to the board after this, unfortunately. But we'll see what happens. And this is a pretty good opener. No Tayu, unfortunately, but we do have Upstart. We've got Drag Down. We got Morphing Jar, so, pretty decent stuff overall. So our opponent is going to draw 5 there. And then they're going to go for Forceful, look at our hand, send back Morphing Jar number 2. Honestly, I'm okay with that. I think Morphing Jar is the better one to have here. And then they're going to set 1, pass back to us. We fire an Upstart, draw a Sangan. We're going to set the Morphing Jar, and then we're going to go for Drag Down. I think a more safe play would have been potentially to set the Sangan. If they got Warrior Lady, they got to banish the Warrior Lady to deal with the Sangan, and we'd be fine with that. But I just go for the combo heavy play because I want to draw into Tayu or something. But we see their hand, they had Tribe, DD Warrior Lady, DD Warrior Lady. So, the Sangan wouldn't have really made that big of a difference anyways, I think. And we pitched the Tribe because they'll have a Warrior Lady either way. We draw a Thunder Dragon, which at least we can pitch that, get 2 more Thunder Dragons decked in a little bit. But unfortunately, that's not really the most helpful thing for us. We're going to pass back to them. They're going to bring out a Breaker. They're going to pop one of our back row there, pop a True Nade. That is ultimately okay. I mean, we don't really need the True Nade right now, but we're going to pitch their entire hand off that Morphing Jar. We draw 5 as well. And we got Shallow Grave, we got Cyber Jar, so those are pretty decent. But we are taking damage here. Our opponent's going to go for Duo, which is kind of rough for us. They're going to pitch a Morph Generator number 2, and they're going to, we're just going to send the book because we don't really have anything to combo super hard with the book, so we're just going to set it, or send it. They're going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw another book, so that's kind of funny. We're going to think about this a little bit, and we're just going to go for Spell Reproduction, pitching a True Nade and a book to try and get back the upstart, as I do want to draw into a Tayu. Unfortunately, they've got the IO, so that just shuts that down. So we're just going to set this Cyber Jar, set this Shallow Grave, pass back to our opponent here. We could have potentially gone for Shallow Grave first, just because it's a less costly card into IO. Unfortunately, they've got this Magical Scientist as well. So they'll be able to bring up Balter, and we can't really do anything against Balter. So we just do kind of lose the game here. We don't have any spells that can get us back into it because of IO. Balter is just such a powerful card. And yeah, Reborn will not do it, unfortunately. And they're going to pay 7, keep the IO up, and go in for lethal. So that will be the end of the game there. So MTGR doing a bit less good in this second match. But I think that the deck can have hands like that. We never drew a Tayu, and Tayu is so important for the deck. I also maybe misplayed, with my Morph Jar number 2s, with my siding. Maybe I shouldn't have sided into the Soul Release Fiber Jar stuff, as that is kind of cope. But yeah, I mean, one of the flaws with this deck is that if you're doing things like Morphing Jar and you're just setting that defensively, your opponent will get a fresh new hand to sort of do things with. And there's so many power cards in this format that can be a real detriment to you. So you kind of got to be comboing off, or else you're probably going to lose the game. But when you do combo off, as shown in the previous match, it can be pretty decent. But this isn't the last degenerate deck I got for you. I got one more deck to show off before I finish my main coverage of Vampire format. It's the final countdown. Do-do-do-do. Don't copyright strike me. I'm singing too badly for that to probably work. But yeah, we got Final Countdown. Very fun sort of strategy here. And it's the perfect way to end my coverage of Vampire format. The final strategy I'm covering is Final Countdown. And this is a very fun sort of alt-win condition. Basically, it's a normal spell. It says pay 2,000 life points after 20 turns have passed after you activate this card. Counting the turn you activate this card at the first turn, you win the duel. Very cool strategy here. Basically, we're just playing triple Final Countdown, triple Thunder Dragon, and a Fiber Jar as our, win con lineup and our monster lineup here. It's basically a little weird. Thunder Dragon thin out the deck, though, to draw into the Final Countdown. And Fiber Jar can reset the deck, which can be very good at sort of buying you more time. Beyond this, I just filled the deck to the brims with as many stall cards as I could imagine and hoped that it would be enough. So beyond this, we've got Graceful Charity to draw deeper into our deck. We got Triple Messenger apiece. I don't think this is the best floodgate in the format. But people are playing a lot of Warrior Ladies, and this can flood out that. We've got Mirage Nightmare plus triple MST to draw deeper into our deck. We got Pot of Greed here. We got Upstart Goblin. All this draw power is very, very good. For the traps, we've got a bunch of stall your traps. We got Frozen Soul, which is a very interesting trap card. It says you can only activate this card when your life points are at least 2,000 lower than your opponent. Skip your opponent's next battle phase. So this is a way to sort of stop a battle phase. And given that you're activating Final Countdown, will likely be on the back foot for most of the game. This will likely be live most of the time. We got Triple Gravity Bind, which is a very powerful floodgate. We've got Imperial Order. We got Mirror Force to clear your opponent's monsters. We got Triple Nightmare Wheel to basically serve as a mini floodgate, just stopping one of your opponent's monsters. Also potentially an alt win con if your opponent can't clear it. It deals 500 a turn, so not bad. We got Triple Saccharitsu Armor as well to deal with their monsters. It isn't quite a stall card, but just getting monsters off their board is very good in my opinion. We got Triple Thunder of Ruler to skip their battle phase. We got Triple Torrential Tribute and Triple Waboku here. This is a bit of an awkward deck composition. You know, we're not playing things like Raigeki, Dark Hole, etc. You could definitely play those if you want to clear their board as well. But I value the traps a little bit more than the spells, as you want to prevent as much damage as possible. Now, this does make the deck very susceptible to sideboard hate, things like Royal Decree, things like Jinzo. So our side deck is a little bit more prepared for that. We've got triple Double Snare. Double Snare is a very interesting spell card. It says destroy one face-up card on the field that has an effect that negates trap cards effects. This only really applies to Royal Decree and Jinzo. But, you know, it's a slightly better out to both of them than things like Fisher would be, or, you know, I don't know, like Dust Tornado or something like that. I think the Double Snare is kind of necessary in a deck like this that does die to things like that. And it's a very funny side deck tech, so we do have that here. We've got triple Gravekeeper Spy to sort of wall up a bit, also to side out of some of our trap cards in games 2 and 3 because our traps will most likely be dead more of the time. We've got Sinister Serpent plus triple Magic Jammer in case they bring in more spells. We've got triple Prohibition here. To sort of call, like, you know, MST, Royal Decree, Jinzo, things like that. That can give us a bit of trouble. We got a Harpy's Feather Duster in case they're on a bunch of back row. And lastly, we've got Painful Choice. Painful Choice is an interesting card in this deck. Now, something you could do with Painful is you could make a build where you Painful Choice, send 3 Final Countdown and 2 other cards, like 2 Magician Fates maybe, and then get back Final Countdown that way. You could do that. I felt like, you know, that might be a little bit more bricky and like a little bit less stally. So I like the version where you just sort of stall your opponent out. Now, this version does have some flaws because there is a lot of spell and trap removal in the format. Harpies is around, triple MST is around, Breakers around, and then post-signing there's going to be even more. But I do think that, like, this build, you know, you're playing enough cards to draw background hate that, like, you should be fine overall, in my opinion. But that is, you can definitely build the more quick way with Painful if you do want to. But outside of drawing Painful exactly, the Magician of Fates don't quite do as much. So I'm not the biggest fan of that version of the deck, but you can definitely build it if you want. But that's going to do it for the side deck. We do have a fusion deck here. We've had a fusion deck in each of the decks that I've featured, and you do want a fusion deck in all of these because it sort of bluffs your opponent that you're not playing a degenerate strategy, but realistically, you're never going to go into this. But it is the standard sort of toolboxy fusion deck that I've mentioned in other videos. But that's going to do it for the deck breakdown. Let's dive into some games and actually see if we can manage to pull off a win with Final Countdown. Okay, we got a game against PJ Darkness here. For even guests on the channel, I mean, they just played against us in the last match there. So we're going to dive into the games here. And we are both going to draw, and we got a pretty good opener. I mean, Thunder Dragon, double Thunder Dragon's obviously not the best, but Pot of Greed is pretty good. We got Saku as well. So, you know, not the worst thing in the world. We're going to go for pot, draw 2. We draw another Frozen Soul, not the best. We're going to go for upstart, you know, make our Frozen Soul more likely to be live. And then we're just going to set this MST, set the Nightmare Wheel. If they've got, like, Harpies, then we're okay losing this. Like, Nightmare Wheel died to Harpies either way, so that's fine. It's just a little bit awkward. We don't want to commit all our back row yet in case of a big blowout. Our opponent's going to go for pot. They're going to go for duo, so that's a bit unfortunate. They're going to hit Frozen Soul, which is rough. That does reveal that we're on a deck like this. We're also going to pitch this Thunder Dragon here. They're going to go for Painful Choice, sending 5. They send Comfy, Forceful, Mine, MST, and Reaper. So it looks like they're still on the Mine deck, or Mane deck. We're going to give them Mane, and they are going to summon out that Mane and try to attack in. We're just going to Nightmare Wheel that, cut them off from getting more monsters here. And, you know, they're going to draw 3 off Graceful here and pitch a Mine and a Fiber Jar there. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. That does deal 5 to them, so we are, you know, sort of getting in damage. We're going to set this IO, set the Saku, pass back to them. Figure they don't have an MST for the IO. And if they'd had Harpies, they might have used it last turn as well. So I feel like we're ultimately fine here. They're going to think about this. They're going to summon out a tribe, attack in with the tribe, and we're just going to sack Red to armor that. So that will clear the tribe. We're drawing Mirror Force. So that's pretty good as well. I'm just going to pass back to them, though, as I feel like this is ultimately okay, and I don't necessarily want to use a Mirror Force too early. I think this was a bit of a mistake, though. I should have just gone for Mirror Force here. But, I don't know. It is what it is. They're going to go for Rhoda. We're going to think about whether we want to IO that, and we are going to IO that. They're going to bring out Lily, though, and that is really rough for us. They're going to attack in with Lily. Deal 3,400. We do need to remain above 2,000, or else we won't be able to activate our win con. We draw another Nightmare Wheel, which is pretty good. But we're going to actually set the Mirror Force and set the Nightmare Wheel like that. Pass back to them. Unfortunately, they're at 4,500. So, you know, our life points are pretty even. We're not 2,000 away from for the Frozen Soul. They're going to bring out Exiled Force, attack in. We've got the Mirror Force to clear 3 of their monsters. That will clear our Nightmare Wheel as well. But we got another Nightmare Wheel set. And we draw Final Countdown, so we're going to let that IO go. We're going to fire this Final Countdown, pay 2,000, and start the turn count. Now, it's a little bit weird. We kind of have to just put this on the field, and we'll just put counters on it to keep track. This is turn 1, pass back to them. This will be turn 2. They're going to summon out a Mayonai and try and attack in for damage. We're just going to Nightmare Wheel that, stop that from happening. And that'll be turn 2. They do have a Mirage there, so we do have to snipe that with an MST. And so it's been 2 turns off Final Countdown. This will be the 3rd turn on Final Countdown. We draw another Saku, which is really good. We're going to set that pass back to them. So that'll be turn 3 on Final Countdown. This will be turn 4 on Final Countdown. So we're already a fifth of the way here. They've got DD War Lady. We're just going to Frozen Soul to skip the battle phase. And you might wonder why I did this instead of going for Sakuretsu Armor. The reason I did this is because, next turn, with the Nightmare Wheel dealing them 500 damage, we won't actually be 2,000 away from them. So we have to fire the Frozen Soul now. And it's a bit awkward, but we kind of have to do it. We're going to deal another 5 to them off the Nightmare Wheel. We're going to set this MSC pass back to them. And that was the end of turn 7, I believe. Or no, 5. That was the end of turn 5, yeah. Because this is turn 6. So we're doing fine here. They're going to attack in 415 with the Warrior Lady. We do have this Saku for the other Warrior Lady, though. And that will be turn 8. Yeah, I think I did the math right here. I don't actually know. Someone in the comments will know for sure, but I think I missed some turns. And then, yeah. But we're going to go for Frozen Soul here. And, they're just going to pass back to us. That was turn 10, I believe, because their turns are always even. Our turns are odd. We're going to go for Graceful here. Draw 3. We're going to pitch we're going to think about this for a second. We're going to pitch a Thunder Dragon and a Thunder of Ruler. We're pitching the Thunders here. Thunder of Ruler, I really don't like this card. We do have the board on lockdown right now. But if they draw an out to it, we need to activate this in the standby phase. So we kind of have to predict that they have an out. So I don't really like Thunder Ruler over the Gravity Bind and the TT. We're just going to set those pass back to them. That was turn 11. This will be turn 12. They're going to bring out a Witch of Black Forest, go for TT of their own there. And that is absolutely fine by us. We saved the TT of our own because we could just Gravity Bind that board. But they're going to search out Breaker with the Witch. And, that'll be great because we can just break that. Or we can TT that is. They're going to Reborn the DD Warrior Lady. We do have this Gravity Bind here to stop that from going through. That was turn 12. We draw here. We draw Waboku, pass back to them. And this will be turn 13. They bring out a Breaker. We've got this TT here. We're going to pass back to them. And let's see what they do. We got TT here as well. So we're going to set that, pass back to them. So that was turn 15. That was turn 16. This is turn 17. We draw Messenger. We don't necessarily need to activate it, so we won't. In case they've got Harpies or something, we want to chain Waboku to that. That was turn 17. This will be turn 18, or that was turn 18. This will be turn 19 if my math is correct. And I'm feeling pretty good about this. We're just going to set the MST in case they got pre-mat or something like that. But that will indeed be the end of the game. So, they're just going to pass. They didn't have an out to that. If I did miscount the turns, then we had Waboku for the following turn anyway. So we would have been able to win that no matter what, even if I did miscount slightly. So very cool to see Final Countdown actually being able to go off here. But game 1, you are most likely to pull it off because your opponent has not pre-sided against this deck. Games 2 and 3 might be a little bit more tricky. So let's see how those games go as well. I do side out of some of the stuff here. I side out of the Thunder of Ruler because Thunder of Ruler was really awkward for me. I side into Gravekeeper's Spy, I believe, in place of those. So yeah, I do make some slight changes. I also side in these double snares because the double snares are to stop Decree, Jinzo, etc. that they might bring in instead. I keep the Messenger pieces in. I think this is a little bit awkward in the face of the Mianai deck. But I don't know. It can stop DD Warrior Ladies. It can stop Jinzo. So I don't know. They've got Forceful Duo, so this might be a little bit tricky for us. We draw Frozen Soul, which is okay, I guess. We're just going to fire Messenger, set a Waboku, pass back to them. And they're going to go for heavy. We've got Waboku, at least a chain there. And they're going to set another pass back to us. We've got Mirage of Nightmares. So we'll be able to activate that, set this Frozen Soul, pass back to them. And we will be able to draw 5 here. Or 4 here, that is. They bring out a Breaker, and they're going to break our non-Mirage back row. That is the right choice. It's a Frozen Soul, which we can't use right now. They're going to attack in for a ton here. 3,600. They get a search off of me and I, and we're feeling really rough about this. I mean, some of the cards in hand can be good, like Gravity Bind can wall us up for a little bit. But unfortunately, we don't draw MST, and our opponent will just, pick one to keep. Unfortunately, they keep the double snare, so not going to quite be that good here. We just got to hope that they don't have a monster or they don't want to commit a monster in a potential TT, this will likely be the end of the game. We do get to draw 4 here, and those are not 4 good ones, really. They've got a witch, and that will be the end of the game here. So, that's how the games can go as well. If you don't draw what you need to actually do the final countdown stuff to stall your opponent, you can just easily lose very easily. So, yeah, kind of rough there, but we're going to be going first here. So hopefully we can sort of lock down the game a little bit better here going first. So this is a really good opener, actually. We're going to draw a pot for 2 more. We're going to set a Saku and a Wuboku here, pass back to them. We don't really need to commit the fiber until they've got until we basically used up more of our stall cards here. It's basically what I'm thinking. I think that is correct. I mean, there is the risk of them drawing deeper and drawing to Nobleman or Exiled or something like that, which would be pretty bad for us. But I think it's fine just saving it. It's a little bit awkward though. They're gonna MST our Wuboku or our TT there. They're gonna attack in 4 to 1,000. We just take that. We don't need to use the Wuboku yet on 1,000 there. I mean, they do get a search here, so that is kind of awkward. They search out Cliff the Trap Remover, which is a really good card against the Gravity Bind strategy, and it can be searched off of me and I. So, very good side deck card for this deck. They are going to set to pass back to us. We draw Final Countdown, so that is really good. We're going to go for Final Countdown, pay 2,000, and then we're going to set a Mirror Force here, hopefully clear away that Cliff. This will be turn 2. They've got Harpies, but we got Wuboku here, so we can at least do that. They're going to set 1, switch the Mana to the defense, pass back to us. We draw Imperial Orb, which is really good as well. That can stop something like Nobleman from actually going through. We are going to set MST, Io, and Wuboku there. Pass back to our opponent. That was turn 3 on the countdown. I forgot to mark that. This will be turn 4. They're going to go for Forceful. We do go for Io because we want to keep the Fiber Jar in hand. I think this might have been a mistake because it might have been better just to, save Io for the Fiber Jar. But if they shuffled back the Fiber Jar, then we don't, it's kind of awkward in that way, right? So I went for the Io there. Maybe a mistake, but we fired the Wuboku here as well. And they're going to pass back to us. We draw Spy, which is pretty good. We do pay 700 for the Io, or we potentially would. I choose not to because I don't want to go too far down in life points. I think I probably should have just kept it up though. But I figured I got Wuboku. If they've got Nobleman or Raigeki or something like that for the Spy, then we can eat that, fire the Wuboku, and then set the Fiber Jar next turn. So I figured I'd be fine in that regard. But unfortunately, they do have the Raigeki. They've got Ring to pop the Witch. And they're going to actually search out a Jinzo here. I mean, we got to Wuboku that because, we cannot activate Wuboku under Jinzo. They're going to bring out Jinzo, fire Comfy, and rip the last card out of our hand, which is indeed the Fiber Jar. So, yeah, maybe a bit of a mistake to let the Io go. But they could have done the same play, just, searching out Jinzo first and then summoning out, negating Io, and then ripping the card out of our hand. So it wouldn't have mattered ultimately which order we did it if we had the Io up. It is just very unfortunate. We draw Saku, which is not going to be helpful here. They bring out Cliff, and they just attack in for 3,600. I could have potentially kept the Saku in hand, but at this point, I'm just hoping to draw something, like double snare or something. But I'm probably dead here either way. So I don't really think it matters. I'm just trying to bluff. And we draw a Countdown, which is not that good. So we're going to set that as a bluff. Pass back to our opponent, but they know that we are very likely dead. They're just going to bring out a Morphing Jar because, if we had 2 books of Moonset, this would play around it. And that will be in the end of the game. We did make it to turn 9 on this final countdown, so we made it about halfway there, but something like Jinzo just shuts down this deck so well. And yeah, maybe if we had gone for the Fiber Jar earlier, it might have been a bit better. I mean, they had Exiled in hand there either way, so it probably wouldn't have mattered. But yeah, it might have been a little bit better. But anyways, I hope that you enjoyed these sorts of degenerate decks, these all-win con decks. I think they're really cool that these decks do exist. They may not be the best thing in the world, but they are very interesting, and they operate on a different axis than any other deck in the format. So very cool to see that these things exist and are out there. I think that these are all probably around rogue status. They're way too interruptible and very easy to side deck against, but they can indeed win games sometimes. So very cool to see these in action, and I hope that you enjoyed as always. This will be the end of my mainstream coverage for Vampire format, because I'm going to be diving into Chaos format soon. I think we'll have one video on Dark Crisis format, which is basically the unlimited version of this format. So I'll put a video on that, but then we'll get into the Chaos guide in preparation for the Chaos tournament coming up this weekend on the YGO from Zero Discord server. Link in the description down below. if you do want to join that and play in that. Also, if you like this sort of content, you should definitely subscribe to the channel. I release videos like this quite often, and subscribing, helps me get seen by more people, help the community grow, and helps for bigger tournaments, more playtesting, things like that. Also, if you want to support me directly, I do have a Patreon, link in the description. I have a poll on the Patreon about what ideas people would like to see for videos, and people have expressed their opinions on that, so I will be making new tiers for the Patreon very soon. But I got to give a shout out to my paid members on Patreon there. So thank you to Brain Donker and thank you to Rincewind for supporting me. If you subscribe to the Patreon, you'll also get shout outs in the future. But let me know what you think of all these decks down below and what you thought of Vampire format as a whole. I thought it was really, really fun. But I am excited to dive into Chaos and see how Yu-Gi-Oh! Completely changes at the end of the DM era. So I hope that you look forward to that. And until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.